For more on this, we're joined by Guy Ziv. He's an associate professor at American University School of International Service. So it's a pleasure. Thank you for your time. Firstly, I'm curious about your thoughts on how Israel's domestic policy might change under Netanyahu government, if at all.
Well, what we're seeing in this election, this is the fifth one in 3.5 years, is that the religious right in general and Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's longest-serving prime minister in particular, appear to be the victors of this election. And the rise of the radical right is the real story of this election. The Religious Zionist Party, it's a far-right party that promotes Jewish supremacism, has emerged as the third largest party and would be an essential partner to any Netanyahu-led coalition. There is one person responsible for the radical right's success, and that is Netanyahu himself, who needed to orchestrate or felt the need to orchestrate their entry into the Knesset in order to preserve his own precarious political situation. This is a prime minister who was under indictment, and that had created a big split even among more moderate or softer parts of the Israeli right. So I think we are in for very interesting times if the radical right actually does become part of a future government. This could affect Israeli relations with Israel's relations with its Palestinian neighbors. It could affect the status of Palestinian citizens of Israel. It can affect U.S.-Israel relations, Israel's relationship with the Jewish diaspora abroad, especially in the United States. So the implications here are pretty tremendous. And of course, democracy itself could be very much impacted by these election results.
Yeah, there's also Itamar Ben-gvir, who would likely be included in Netanyahu's government. And he's been described as an ultra-nationalist, and he was once convicted of inciting racism and supporting terrorism. What kind of influence do you think him and people like him will have on governance?
Well, that's the big question. And I was really thinking of him when I talked about the rise of the radical right. So Itamar Ben-gvir is a neo-Kahanist. He is a Jewish supremacist. He is somebody who used to be part of, very much part of the fringe of Israeli society. And Netanyahu essentially, by bringing him in, by having his small party merge with another far-right party to ensure that they would be admitted into the Knesset, thereby preserving his nationalist bloc, by doing so, he's legitimized them. And so they have become a legitimate player today in Israeli politics. Itamar Ben-gvir himself says that he has moderated some of his more radical views. He might just have been saying that for election purposes. Regardless, I think that this is kind of a dark sign for Israel's democratic future, especially since Ben-gvir himself said that if he enters the government, he will push for abandoning or abolishing the trial against Netanyahu by pushing for the so-called French law, which would grant immunity to a sitting prime minister who is under investigation, and in Netanyahu's case under indictment, and said he would do so retroactively, meaning this would be legislation he would push and promote, in particular to help Prime Minister Netanyahu.
A quick question, Professor, about foreign policy, particularly when it comes to Ukraine, which has asked Israel a number of times for air defense systems assistance. Israel has spoken out against the war in Ukraine, but is hesitant to go much further than that. Do you think that approach is likely to change under Netanyahu?
I don't think that approach is likely to change under Netanyahu. Netanyahu has been very quiet about this whole episode. He is intent on maintaining good relations with his friend Vladimir Putin. The current Israeli Prime Minister, Yair Lapid, who is the caretaker Prime Minister, has been pretty vocal in support of Ukraine and in condemning the Russians, but he too has been hesitant to provide any sort of massive amounts of arms that the Ukrainians have asked for. Israel is in this kind of precarious situation where they do not want to alienate the Russians too much, but at the same time, they don't want to remain completely neutral either. I don't think this would change under Netanyahu, but there will probably be less vocal support and certainly less military aid of any sort to the Ukrainians should Netanyahu form the next government.
I appreciate the perspective, Professor Guy Ziv at the American University School of International Service. Thank you once more.
Thank you.